I want to welcome you to Dream Chasers Radio with me, your host, Yaya Diamond. What's up, peoples? How you doing? Yeah, it is a great day, and I'm so very excited to be here. I have a return guest. You know how I feel about return guests. I absolutely love it because I see progress. I love progress. I love progress. And I have Carlo Armenise back on the show today, and he is putting his book out again. It's a republication, but you probably don't know nothing about it, do you? That's why we are here. And I'm here with Carlo. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
anytime. Anytime, Carlos. So, before we get into your book, okay, I want to just kind of go through you again and who you are and how you became an author.
Well, who I am is, I've been writing for most of my life. Actually, I wasn't an author when I started. When I started, I was a retail executive, and while I was in retail, I was writing. And then when I finally decided I wanted to get out of retail, I went into writing full time. So I've been doing it for years, and I started, writing. I write different types of genre. I've got 4 books out now, and they range from horror to comedy. And then in this one, historical mystery. It was the first time I'd written one of these books. So that's what I've been doing. And I'm in the process of finishing my 5th book as I sit here today. So my goal is to continue to write because I think that I have some stories to tell. And I think there's some real benefit in getting it out and getting it into the public. So that's kind of
Definitely.
my story.
That is a cool story. And that shows that you don't necessarily have to be in the field that you want to be in to start.
That's right.
Hmm.
If you find a love, and for some reason at some point in your life you need to go in a different direction to make money and support yourself, doesn't mean you have to give up your love. You find ways to continue to do it. And I was blessed to be able to find the ways and the time and the money to continue my writing. So I'm really ecstatic about that. And now I'm able to write full time, which I really appreciate.
Nice. That's really good. I mean, a lot of people would want to be doing what you're doing, which is full-time author. Yeah, that's great. That is awesome. So, all right. So we're getting to your book now because I really, really am curious about this. It's about a story about a Croatian family. I mean, it's called The Picture Box, a historical mystery. Tell me about this book.
So I lived next door. I lived next door to a gentleman who was Croatian. And it turns out that his family was very, very successful in Croatia, his grandmother especially. And as we got to know each other, he knew I was a writer. So we got to know each other, he started to tell me his story and his family story. And I got more excited about the possibility of bringing it to life. It's been the first time that I'd written a historical mystery. Most of my books are fiction. So this was a combination of fiction and reality, which was fun. He told me his story. And what I did then is I just took it from that point and worked with him on the story and really started to do some intense investigation into the whole plot point of what he was telling me. It's about Croatia. It's about a city in Croatia called Osijek. And what I didn't know about Croatia at the time was that they were going through a whole transformation as a country. They started out being governed by Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia was a communist country. Croatia was primarily Christian, and they got to a point where they didn't want to be governed by the communists anymore. So they broke off. They went to war with Croatia, and they had a fairly sizable war, and they separated essentially. And then what was so fascinating about this book is because a lot of it takes place during World War II. So there's the Hitler influence in Croatia at the time. And so his grandmother was the first woman in Croatia to have a driver's license. And she was the first woman owner of the trying to remember, the Royale Hotel, which is literally there today.
Wow.
And in the process of going through that, I learned a whole bunch about Croatia and the Croatian history. Uh, and that was kind of the impetus for the story to begin with. But it takes a whole bunch of turns. I mean, there's a lot that went on with the Germans when it came to the Jews and how they took care of literally the Jews. Well, in Croatia, they did the same thing because the Germans came in and were influencing what was going on in Croatia. And so they did the same thing. In fact, even worse when it
Mm,
came to, killing off the Jews. And so it was one of those stories where you learned a lot about the history, and you learned a lot about how it was that Croatia got involved with the Germans. His grandmother was very successful. He was a singer, and he wanted to continue singing, but he wanted to go to America to sing. And so when the war started in Croatia, his grandmother pulled some strings and got him a visa to go to America to sing. And so he wasn't in the country during most of the war. He came back at the end, which is really where the story picks up. It picks up from the fact that he was in America, he was very successful in Vegas, and he gets the notification that his grandmother was killed or died. So he's going back to his hometown in Croatia for her funeral. And in the process of going back to her funeral, he finds out all kinds of mysteries about his grandmother and about what her involvement was in the war and with the association with the German, because she had some association with them. As it turns out, the Germans left a lot of gold in Croatia. They were taking all the jewelry from the Jews and they were melting it down into gold bars. And when the war stopped, they left primarily a huge amount of that in Croatia. And the way the story goes is when he goes back to his grandmother's funeral, she gives him a gift, and that gift is a gold bar. And so he wants to know where that gold bar came from, how she got it, and what it meant. And that's kind of where the story goes. It goes from him doing the research about his grandmother and his family and the gold bar, and so pretty fascinating. And but all, like I said, all the buildings and everything there was all real. The
wow.
story is kind of fictional.
Right, right. But still, I mean, it could be in one aspect, it could be true.
Well, no, yes, and in one aspect, it is true. I mean,
See?
because the war in Croatia did take place.
Mm-hmm.
They did go to war with Yugoslavia, and they broke away and became a Christian, totally Christian nation. Croatia wanted to be all Catholic. They didn't want to have anybody in their country that wasn't Catholic. So when they went to war, they forced all the other nationalities, the Jews and the Serbians and the Gypsies, they had to fight for Croatia and give up their own heritage in order to stay in Croatia at the time. So all that was going on. And of course, Dario, the lead character in the book, he didn't want to fight in the war. His parents left and went to France. So he stayed. And then when he went to America is when he got away from the war. But he comes back. And what happened was he comes back to find that many of his friends and a lot of people that he knew growing up had all been killed in the war. And so now he was trying to, and of course he felt guilty because he wasn't there to fight. And many of his friends kind of made him feel guilty. You didn't stick around and help defend the country. And so that was a lot of that. Uh,
Yeah.
so combination of real facts and took a little leeway with the storyline itself.
Right,
Uh,
right. How did this change you? I mean, to know all about this history being fact and fiction mixed in together, but the fact, how did that help you to understand better what you were going to write about?
well, I think the key for me was the fact that he had a family that was well known in Croatia, and it also was something that really put me in a situation where I was amazed at all the history that I didn't know.
Mhm.
So many times in your life, you meet people that are from different countries and different places, and you really don't spend a lot of time getting to know them really, how they were, where they were born, what they went through. And in this particular case, because it took place, the grandmother's life, not Dario's, but the grandmother's life took place during World War II, it gave me all kinds of information as to what went on during the war in Croatia and the reach of the Germans and their desires. Hitler spent a long time going through the world collecting and stealing pieces of art from especially the Italians. And so part of this story was about the grandmother's was forced by the Germans to use the hotel, the Royale, which is still there, to demonstrate and show his artwork.
Mm.
And what ended up happening is she didn't want to do it, but she did because, of course, it was she was under the control of the Germans. But as it turned out in the story, she actually steals some of his artwork, sells it, and uses it to support the people in Croatia that he
Hey!
swear that And so the idea really got to be as it gave me a whole, it was a requirement to really spend hours researching the cities and the towns and the places. And the picture box actually came from the story topic, came from the fact that when the grandmother was a young girl, she was there in Croatia when the Germans were there, and basically one of the German soldiers was taking pictures of her young self, and essentially there were pictures that she got, that she kept through the years, that she passed along to Dario, and these pictures were of German soldiers, and the fact that they were burying these gold, and so that's where the picture box came from, is it was this box of pictures that demonstrated what she went through.
Wow. And the picture on the cover, where is that? Is that an actual place?
That is an actual place. That's a there's a in Croatia today in Osijek, basically there are these I don't know what you would actually call them. They're like um, caves, if you will, that were used by the Croatians to store ammunition during the war. And what they did is after the war was over, they transformed those into places for concerts and music and that kind of thing. And so the picture box really took place in the story took place in one of these caves essentially. That's where the picture comes from on the cover. That's an actual picture of one of the caves.
Wow. That is amazing. I like what you've done. You've added, that fiction to the actual mystery of the truth and made it a story. I mean, if you had to say anything to anyone, what would you summarize this book as?
I think I would summarize it as being a depiction of the history surrounding uh, Croatia and the history surrounding this town of Osijek. And there were some wonderful things and wonderful places that are still existing. When I wrote this book, as I was writing this book, I wanted to go to Croatia because I wanted to go to the Hotel Royale because it still exists and the restaurants and everything. So what it meant to me was it opened my eyes to a whole nother area of the world and a whole nother historical point in time that I had no idea about. It wasn't me sitting down and creating Sam Razor, for instance, or creating some character that I made up. These were real characters. And so the obligation I had was to do it justice in terms of how I wrote it and how these places came off. And the most inspired I got is when people read it and then came back and talked to me about the same thing, that I really want to go to Croatia now. This was an interesting read, and it really got my interest to be able to see it and experience it. So I think that was the most important thing. Open my eyes.
Awesome, awesome. I think that people will have that same experience because a lot of people don't know about Croatia. The only reason I know about Croatia is because of a past incident with it as well. And someone mentioned that they were from Croatia that I met. But I mean, it's not one of those places that you just come up, in the conversation. Croatia,
No,
where
no,
is
it
that?
doesn't. But it's so beautiful. I mean,
It is.
it's so beautiful, and I took advantage of bringing all the beauty into the book as well. So it really defined the location, the churches, the restaurants, the theaters, and so much of this was part of Dario's life. So as I was writing this, I was using his experiences in these same places and his friends. And even though he wasn't there for most of the war, if not any of the war, he didn't really, he still loved his country and he loved his city and he loved his grandmother and his parents. And so it was a nice way to introduce myself to a whole historical side of myself that I want to continue to develop. This whole German World War II thing, I have really no understanding of what went on. And I had no idea that the Germans were as influential in Croatia as they were in Germany, and that there were some pretty bad people in Croatia at the time that were being governed by the Germans and doing the things they did because the Germans told them to.
Wow. I had no idea as well. Well, with your book, The Picture Box, a historical mystery, people can find out.
That's right.
How can people get this book?
It's on Amazon right now. And what I'm doing with Authors Tranquility is I'm republishing the books because they were with different publishers. And so I'm going through the republishing process. Picture Box is now done. It's been released again on Amazon. Uh, and so I'm doing the same thing with that one. So it's out, available. Get it.
Awesome. I'm gonna put that in our book club. It's gonna be kind of cool. I love doing this. I love finding out about books. What do you have coming up next?
Well, I've got a story called let's see, Deceitful Intentions. It's about two young women. That one of the young women is in a car accident with her mother, and the mother is killed, but the young woman sustains a whole bunch of terrific injuries, loses her leg, loses her memory, that kind of thing. Doesn't realize that her mother was killed in the accident until she comes out of the coma that she was in and goes back to her hometown to try to find out, really what happened. But she doesn't have any memory. So she's
Mm,
learning as she goes. And she has a friend, Julia, who helps her. And so to me, this was my first opportunity to write a more female focused book, young females. And the idea was to really write something it's a mystery. It's another mystery. And it's got a lot of twists and turns, and it's out. I'm now just finishing the republishing of it, and it'll be released again here within the next month. That's my next thing. And then I'm writing another Footsteps in the Dark. I've got 9 more stories that I'm writing, and I'm writing another Sam Razor mystery.
that
So
is so cool. That is so cool. To be a full-time author. Yes. I mean, that's a dream come true. Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
The tough part about it is, of course, just continuing to write. I mean, it's like you've got a very successful career, and you've got to keep at yourself to keep it being successful, right? And
Oh, yeah.
making sure people want to hear from you and what you're bringing up. And writing is kind of the same way. You don't write anything and then turn around. And I've been blessed enough to be able to write well enough that people kind of like what I write. It could go the other way, of course, but it hasn't so far. So
Well, that's good. We'll cross our fingers and our toes and our arms and our legs.
thank you. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. And keep you in our prayers. I want to thank you so much, Carlo, for being on the show. I appreciate you coming back. And when you do your next books, I need you back so that we can share on this progress that you're making and how you can inspire other people to go after their dreams and their hopes as well.
They got to go for it. They've got to go for it. I mean, it's the age old story that if you got a dream, go for it. Don't let anything get in your way. Figure out a way to get to it. Just be dedicated. And, you know, if nothing were to ever come of it from a substantial monetary side, just being able to write and share my stories is payment enough for me.
Definitely, definitely. And for me,
And
thank you
I
so much.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to go ahead and visit Carlos' link will be in the description box below, as well as the Amazon store to actually purchase the book if you'd like to go ahead and do that. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. We wouldn't be anything without you, and Carlos' book would be a closed manuscript without you. So please go ahead and check it out for yourself. And until next time, guys, bye.
Thank you.